Hello, everyone, and welcome to this afternoon's broadcast. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and I'm really looking forward to sharing with you all a wonderful panel, 5 fantastic individuals who are doing amazing things when it comes to our pollinators. I'm really excited about the fact that we're literally covering a fair part of the country. We've got Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Perth, and sort of central New South Wales. So I think we've done pretty well as far as getting a good sample of passionate people working in pollination and working side by side with our pollinators. Thank you for joining this broadcast. I'd like to start by acknowledging that I am coming to you from Sydney here in North Bondi on Bidjigal and Gadigal land of the Eora, and I acknowledge elders past, present and emerging. Given that it's NAIDOC week this week, I've had a fantastic time, particularly with Gardening Australia. We had a few fantastic stories on the show this week. My one particularly was up in the Blue Mountains, looking at the restoration of the gully wetlands in Katoomba. There's been some fantastic events going on around the country, and it's wonderful to acknowledge this week as another opportunity to connect with country. And at the end of the day, that's what our conversation is about today. It's about the importance of our pollinators that help to look after our ecosystems, which are our home and the home of all of the flora and fauna that calls this continent home. As part of, so it's NAIDOC week, it's National Recycling Week, it's Wild Pollinator Count this week. I hope you've been out there counting wild pollinators. Megan Halcroft will talk to us a little bit about that, because that's something that she's been involved with for a long time now, and how valuable this citizen science is, particularly this year, to get as much data as we can from us citizens to compare that to what last year was and the year before, and then next year, given the extreme conditions we've been having in terms of droughts, bushfires, and then the impact of COVID, of course. So welcome everyone to this wonderful conversation. And I'd like to start off by introducing Tim Hurd. Now, I was fortunate enough to meet Tim way back in 2012 when Tim came down and we set up a native beehive associated with my local school, and I've been doing things with Tim and since then. So, Tim, it's wonderful to have you here. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thank you, Costa.
Now, as president of the Australian Native Bee Association, this is a special week for you.
Absolutely. Pollinator Week. It's a really great opportunity for us to highlight our native bees, of course, being the premier pollinators that they are.
Yeah, exactly. And what's been some of the activities that you've been involved with this week? I know you had a talk going on.
Yeah, lots of talks, lots of interviews, radio shows. There's actually been some. Coincidentally, there's been some interesting media this week. That's not actually related to Pollinator Week, but there was a very interesting event that did happen this week, where a council banned the keeping of native bees in their area, and the response to that was just phenomenal, to the extent that they did a backflip. Within 24 hours, they'd changed their policy on that. So maybe it was due to the fact that it was Pollinator Week, increased awareness, a lot of publicity around this topic, that there was such a strong reaction, such an uprising of opinion. People power came came to the rescue, and that council was forced to do a backflip, and now it's all good again. Everyone can keep native bees in that area.
Fantastic, Tim. Sorry, we just had a bit of a dropout there, which unfortunately I'm not sure how much of that we lost. So everyone is still here. So we didn't lose the audience. Thanks for hanging with us, everyone. Do you just want to recap briefly on that, Tim, just because I think we missed some of it?
Yeah, I was just saying that, you know, the interest in native bees, pollinators in general, is so strong now, and that's exemplified by an event that happened this week. It was something that happened in the media where an ABC journalist became aware of the fact that a council had banned the keeping of native stingless bees in their council area. And there was an immediate and huge reaction to that, a reaction against this, the notion that you were not even allowed to keep native bees in this area. And that resulted in that council having to respond very quickly and doing a backflip on their policy. So they removed that policy. They made sure that, in fact, it is possible it is permissible to keep native bees in that council again. So it's all good. That problem has gone away. And I think it's due to the fact that native bees are so much in the public eye at the moment that created a lot of interest, created a lot of reaction, and common sense prevailed.
It was wonderful to see how quickly the backflip took place, and I think it also reflected the fact that we have a community that is really conscious and aware of what's going on. They know the difference between their pollinators, let's say.
Exactly.
You know, and when things like social media start to turn, organisations don't want that turn to be against them, and as a consequence, you know, literally within less than 20 or probably 40 hours, it suddenly, because I saw the first article, I posted about it, and by the end of the next day, I saw the backflip, and it's not about going nah, because it is about education, and that's what this week is all about, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think that was an opportunity for a lot of people to hear about the difference between our native stingless bees and honeybees. Perhaps the policy might have been relevant to honeybees, but it certainly wasn't to native stingless bees, for the very fact that they don't sting and they pose no health threats to anybody, even in dense urban areas. So I think a lot of people would have got that message. And absolutely, it wasn't a case of of revenge on this council. It was a case of raising awareness of the beauty and the benefits of these little native insects.
It's interesting because, yeah, you couldn't really pay for that kind of publicity.
Yeah, well, I think with native bees, they sell themselves, really. I think they're just so inherently interesting and engaging to so many people. I mean, I sometimes describe native bees as being gateway species, in the sense that, you know, they're a gateway to people's awareness and education of the natural environment in general, because it's just so, I think it's just such a natural interest that people have in bees. We all have it, I think. I think it's just something that's in us, perhaps because of our very long history of keeping bees for honey production. Humans have been doing that all over the globe for probably as long as we've been farming, for example. And so just like people love farming, they have a natural interest in that, they have a natural interest in gardening, so too do they have a natural interest in bees. So that provides, I think, when people realize just these little insects that really you might not even take a second look at are in fact inherently interesting, well, they start to think, well, what about the rest of the natural environment? Perhaps it's also as engaging and interesting and important to us as well, which indeed it is, of course. So yes, they're a gateway species. They're a gateway for people to become more broadly aware of the beauty and the wonder and the importance of our native systems.
Exactly, Tim. And, you know, it's wonderful to see that there's so many things happening this week around the country. And that's probably a good cue for me to step into my TARDIS from Brisbane with you and head over to WA. So, Tim, we'll be back with you for the Q&A. And to everyone listening, if you have any questions, rack them up, and our panel will get into them over the second half of this conversation. And if not, all of our panel will jump on and answer the questions on the post. So whatever we don't get through now, we will get through with the panel afterwards. So now I'm going to jump in my TARDIS and head over to WA, where I'm going to catch up with the wonderful Kit Prendergast. Now, Kit, here we go. Where's my my banners here? Kit is a native bee ecologist. And Kit, tell us, welcome first of all. How are you?
G'day from the West.
Yeah. Thanks for taking the time to join our broadcast. And can you tell us a little bit about your connection with native bees, the work you're up to, and what you broadcast out yesterday for people during Pollinator Week?
Okay, so I am a native bee scientist. I've been studying native bees, the solitary ones that you can't keep, for my PhD research over the last 4 years. And my focus is on native bee conservation in urban areas. So urban areas are where the majority of people live, work and play, but they seem to have been neglected when it comes to native bee conservation. So I wanted to find out, can native bees coexist in urban areas? And I found that they definitely can, provided that we conserve our native patches of bushland and plant and retain the native trees. And I also dove into the very controversial, sticky topic of honeybee impacts on native bees and plant pollinator communities. Now, that was my thesis work, but native bees have become part of my life, and I've done many other things regarding native bees, including studying bees in apple orchards in Tasmania, which is where I was born, and doing a lot of citizen science and public outreach, because people do love bees, but the sad thing is that most people don't even realize that there are native bees out there. There's actually about 2,000 species of native bees in Australia, about 20,000 in the world. And then all we get told about really when we're growing up is about the European honeybee, which is actually an introduced species here in Australia. And we have such an incredible diversity of native bees that come in all colours, shapes and sizes with amazing life histories. And so once people do become aware of them, like, you start seeing them everywhere, and it becomes like a quest to see which bees you can find. And there's so many out there that are still undescribed. So it's a really exciting area to be working in for sure. And then regarding Pollinator Week, like many Beeple across Australia, we've been very busy getting the word out there about our native bees, and I've been doing a couple of talks for community groups, schools, millennium kids. I just came from a presentation for them, and yesterday I did a Zoom event about one of my favourite native bees, Amygilla dorsoni, which was featured in a BBC documentary narrated by Sir David Attenborough himself. So I went up to study that bee in Carnarvon last year, and shared some of my tales, my photos and videos of bees mating. So that was my Pollinator Week event.
Wow, that's fantastic. Some of the images of that bee that you've captured, I'll try and put them up in a minute. It is just fascinating to see the type of, they're incredible engineers, those bees.
Yes, they are. So the females nest in the ground. The majority of native bees actually nest in the ground, but these females, they nest in clay pans. So these are this is a very hard substrate, and I was helping a professor from Arizona do some research on this bee, and we were looking at their nests, and we were trying to dig into the clay pan, and we found it very challenging. And then you've got these bees that are small by human standards, but large by bee standards, but still very small, that were able to excavate nests in this very hard clay pan. And lots of our native bees are actually remarkable in some of the feats that they can do. Our Trichocoletes has been found to burrow to depths of over 3 meters, which is crazy.
3 meters?
Yeah.
That is some serious China syndrome going on there.
Yeah. For sure. But then we've got the native bees. I can see you've got one of my photos up there behind us. These native bees, the megachili, they actually don't make their own nests, so they rely on wood-boring beetles to excavate little cavities in wood for their nests. And so lots of studying native bees is about realizing their interconnectedness and interrelationships between species, whether it's bees and plants, or bees and beetles in this case, or even bees and their parasitic wasps that use them for hosts. But these bees rely on wood-boring beetles to make their nests, and sadly, many of these big trees with the riddled with beetle holes are being cleared in agricultural areas and urban areas. But we can help them out, firstly by making sure we don't clear any more trees and native vegetation, but we can also help them out with bee hotels, which is something that I've been very passionate about, endorsing properly made bee hotels, as in not ones that you get from Bunnings. Sorry, Bunnings.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's that next level of opportunity that not just Pollinator Week provides, but all of the ongoing advocacy work of all of our panel and everyone else involved in environmental education is to get these proper design details out there to really support our pollinators in the best way possible. Yeah.
There's so much great research and citizen science going on. It's been huge. Like when I started my thesis, native bees were sort of just a very small niche thing, and it feels like in these past 4 years they've just been getting bigger and bigger, and more people are becoming aware of native bees and reaching out to bee scientists about how they can help them, which is absolutely wonderful. And I think I'm really positive about the direction of native bee conservation in Australia.
Fantastic. Well, Kit, thanks for filling us in on your work. I'm in the TARDIS now, and we'll be back with you shortly. So heading now west. East. I'm heading back east, and we're going to make our way up to Megan and Dan. But first stop will be Melbourne. And down in Melbourne, it's a pleasure to introduce you to Fiona from the Ween Bee Foundation. Fiona, how are you?
I'm fantastic, thanks, Costa. It's been a big week, though, I have to say. It's been a very big week, Australian Pollinator Week. Looking forward to a day off.
Yeah, I can imagine. And here we are doing this kind of last event for the week. Can you tell us a little bit about your work with the Ween Bee Foundation and where you fit into the Pollinator Alliance, so to speak?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the CEO of the Ween Bee Foundation, and the Ween Bee Foundation is a registered charity, and the work that we do is funding research, anything that addresses the national and global threats to bees, and that's honeybees or native bees. So bees are our thing. And my work I would spend about a third of my time with bee researchers around the country, a third of my time with the agricultural industries, the pollination-dependent industries like the almond industry or the apple industry, who need bees for pollination. And then the rest of my time with the honeybee industry, who are the beekeepers, the honeybee beekeepers who are providing pollination services for agriculture. So that's sort of where I fit. About December last year, I was lucky enough to attend the Native Bee conference that was held in Brisbane. And it was really clear that there was a very strong research need to support the work of taxonomy in Australia to identify our native bee species. So we know that that honeybees are really important in a lot of our introduced agricultural crops that form a lot of our food production. They're introduced food crops, and they've co-evolved. Those food crops have co-evolved with the European honeybee. So we need the European honeybee in many cases for those food crops. But in terms of our ecosystem health, there is so much we don't know, as Kit was saying, about our native bees and the role they play, the crucial role they play in maintaining ecosystem health as a keystone pollinator. So at the Native Bee Conference, there was a lot of talk about how many species are still yet to be discovered in Australia, and we think it's around about 1,000 species that still need to be named and documented and discovered. So Wayne Bee Foundation, one of the things we've done is launched a fund for native bee discovery, to discover our native bees, and that's a major fundraising campaign that we're doing to support native bee discovery. So that's been part of what we've been doing through Australian Pollinator Week. Last year in Australian Pollinator Week, Wayne Bee Foundation was very pleased to become a major supporter of Australian Pollinator Week, and we act as a secretariat for the week. So Wayne Bee Foundation funds the web platform that people can go and log on their events for free. And this year we've had over 20 events around Australia registered for Australian Pollinator Week, which has just been fabulous to see. So we're really delighted to play a bit of a support role there to encourage all people, and whether it's bees or other pollinators, it could be birds as pollinators or bats, we don't care. It's about supporting the cause and bringing the community together. So there's some of the things that we've been doing. I know Kit was also mentioning, and I think Tim too, just the importance of supporting the environment and planting things to support our pollinators. So we've really been delighted to get behind a project called Powerful-Pollinators as well. And so we've started producing some planting guides which are available, can be downloaded for free from our website. It's really just an education and information resource that we're supplying for people. They've been provided with many of our partners, various university partners that we've had to help produce those. And we've got about 5 that we've published so far. Most of them are for farm environments, farm landscapes. But with our partners, Rotary, we've just launched one for Melbourne Urban Guide of what to plant in an urban area. So there are 5 guides so far, but we'll have over 20 guides published for around Australia by the end of next year. We're really getting behind that. So it's quite a lot happening. That's probably enough for me, and we'll give some time for our other speakers to talk.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Fiona. I've been putting up the tickers and the banners of the different things you've been speaking about. And so for anyone watching, I'll make sure that all of these links will go into the comments so that you'll be able to follow these, or actually I'll put them on the post. So you'll be able to go to the top of this post when it's finished and find all the links that Tim, Fiona, Kit, Megan and Dan talk about. So thanks, Megan. I'm just going to, thanks, Fiona. I'm just going to head off and jump in the TARDIS and head out to Central West New South Wales now, where I'm going to catch up with Megan Halcroft. And I'll just get her banner up. Here we go. So there we go. And Megan, welcome.
Oh, how you going, Costa?
What a beautiful setting you've got there behind us. That is picture perfect.
Oh, thanks. Yes, we like it a lot.
So whereabouts exactly are you out past Lithgow, are you?
Yeah, we're in Hampton on Jenolan Caves Road, so cold climate. Every time you go, and for the cold climates, I'm going, yeah, nah, that's not cold.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not planting our tomatoes this week.
Yeah, exactly. Plant your tomatoes in February.
Yeah.
and hope they're done by the end of April. Yeah, that's a serious climate. Can you tell us a little bit about your connection with your work as a science communicator and native bees?
Okay, so I started researching native bees in 2006 after I did a horticulture degree. I studied Ostroplegia australis for my honours and for my PhD. And while I was doing my PhD, a colleague and I, of course, she was working with stingless bees as well. And Jenny and I, every time, you do some research, there'd be something that was happening in the Northern Hemisphere for bees, and then there was Pollinator Week, and then there was Save the Bees, this, that, and the other thing. But they all happened in July. So here we are in our jumpers and our scarves with our bee antennae on, trying to get people's enthusiasm to do something about Pollinator Week. And of course, everyone's going, there's no pollinators around now. Anyway, so I finished my PhD, and I was lucky enough to get funding for a project with Western Sydney University's Sustainability Office, and it was called Be Aware of Your Native Bees. And it was just a 12-month community-based educating communities on the importance of native bees. And because I can't count, I had money left over at the end of it. And so Jen said, so what do you want to do with that? And I've gone, well, actually, I'd like to start Australian Pollinator Week, because they keep doing it in June and July in the Northern Hemisphere, and it's incredibly unexciting. So I want to start a Southern Hemisphere Australian Pollinator Week. So I started that in November. I had a month to organise that, because by the time the funding was reorganised and the grant was rejigged, we had a month to get this happening. And I think we had 20 events, but that wasn't bad. But it started, and I timed it in the second week of November, because the year before that, in 2014, the wild pollinator count had come into being. Manu Saunders and Karen Ritter, they had decided that they wanted to start doing some citizen science, and they produced the wild pollinator count. And so I decided that I thought Australian Pollinator Week would be good to have in conjunction with the timing of the wild pollinator count, so that you could do the wild pollinator count as part of your acknowledgement of Australian Pollinator Week, or you could do some art, or you could do some science, or anything, build a bee hotel. So that's what the timing was, and that's my only connection with wild pollinator count, is that I've just tried to get the timing of Australian Pollinator Week around that, so that they sort of went hand in hand collaboratively, hopefully. Anyway, so it continued to just chug along. It was pretty difficult to inspire people as one person. A lot of social media, but it really wasn't growing. And then I attended a workshop with the Ween Bee Foundation a couple of years ago, and I introduced them and Fiona to Australian Pollinator Week, and said, I really want to grow this, but I can't do it on my own. So they took on custodianship of Australian Pollinator Week from me, which I was very grateful for, because it was never going to go anywhere just with me. And since then, it's been amazing what they've been able to do with the website and the Facebook page, and just, to have so much of their work that they do, to be able to be in the name of Australian Pollinator Week, and the fact that, like, you're doing this this interview with all of us for Australian Pollinator Week. I'm just really grateful that that this has been able to go out so widely. I think I can shuffle off this mortal coil and believe I've probably done a little bit to do with of good.
But you know, Megan, that's such a wonderful thing in terms of having that capacity to pass the baton on. I know a similar thing happened with Neighbour Day, the founder of Neighbour Day, passing it on to Relationships Australia, knowing that that's a kind of an organisational structure that can operate that machination much easier and with less weight and focus on fewer people that you and a small group can do. So, you know, all powers to you for your group for throwing that bird and letting it free and giving it that capacity to take a new traction and then grow, which is what it's about. So yeah, there's plenty to do before there's any moving off this mortal coil. Your work is not done, but
yeah,
you don't have to
be easy to die.
Oh, well, look, thank you for giving us that wonderful background, because I think, you know, in terms of what Tim talked about, Native Bee Association, Pollinator Week, and understanding where all these things have come from, and it really informs where they're going to go too, and how they move, and what those foundations are.
Hopefully everyone's going to participate a bit more each year and throughout the year. Hopefully people have become more aware of their native bees. Our little Facebook page that or group that I did with the project of Be Aware of Your Native Bees, we struggled along with 20 members for a good 6 months. We're now 12,500. So yeah, pretty happy with that.
Oh, that's fantastic to hear. Thanks for sharing all that information, and we'll be back shortly with the open panel. Thanks heaps, Megan, and all of your links are there. So for anyone wanting to contact Megan, there's a good list of pages and websites that you can jump on and directly connect with the work that she and the groups that she's involved with are doing. So thanks, Megan. So just coming back over the sandstone curtain into Sydney, I'm now going to call in the Vice President of the, now where is it, of the Australian Native Bee Association, Conservationist, Educator, Meliponist. I like the fact that Dan uses that word, because that's from the Greek word, meli. So Meliponist and specialist in native bees in the Sydney region, Dan Smailes. Dan?
Hey, mate, how you going?
You are looking chilled.
Yeah, well, it's a glorious day here in Sydney, hey? Over on my side, at least.
Yeah. Well, for anyone listening that doesn't know Dan, I will just say this. Since I've known Dan, he is infectious. Much in you know, well, every single one of those people, every single person that's been on, Kit, Megan, Fiona, Tim, all of my work with anyone involved with pollinators, that's the letter P. It's passion. They're passionate pollinator people. And Dan epitomises that like each of the other speakers, because they love what they do. And when you love what you do, you can't just get it out of the way, because you don't get anything out of the way. It's in your way because you put it in the way, because it's what you love. Mate, native bees, what are you up to? What's your week been like? Where, you know, because you're just doing all sorts of crazy things. Tell everyone what you've been up to. That's a good enough story.
Yeah, that's it, mate. It's been a big week. So, you know, this time last week you and I were walking around Stony Range Regional Botanical Garden here on the Northern Beaches, and giving you an insight into the native bee sanctuary that we've also set up there. So yeah, since then, like, it's been a massive week. I just wanted to actually relax a little bit and just get more back into my 9 to 5 sort of work. I don't do native bee work for a career. This is all volunteer work. It's all conservation work for myself and for the people that are involved in Sydney native bees. So since Sunday, what happened, mate? We just we got into the week ahead. All of a sudden, an arborist has called us out for a stingless bee rescue. So that word before, Meliponist, that's primarily what I am. I do a lot of stingless bee rescues here in Sydney. So the species is Tetragonula carbonaria. That's our local social species, our indigenous honeybee of the Sydney region. It actually goes up the east coast as well into Queensland. So lots of people who keep Australian stingless bees, they do have Tetragonula carbonaria with the spiral brood comb. So yeah, I got a phone call, and all of a sudden I'm out just behind me over there, over the hill, not too far away. Just a quick one. They cut out a massive nest out of a natural habitat. So it's a big spotted gum, a really large spotted gum that was in someone's property and it was overhanging their house. And they had to, unfortunately, had to take this tree down, which, you know, is pretty common all around sort of suburban Australia for people to make those decisions. So the arborists do their duty. Once they find a nest of a native species, whatever it might be, whether it's, you know, sugar gliders, possums, cockatoos, or in this case, you know, stingless bees, they give me a call. So that's why I've named it Sydney Native Bees. And so it's easy for them to look it up. And then if it's close, usually it's myself going along. I've got a bunch of friends or trusted specialists as well that can also help, depending where the nest is located. So if it's up the Central Coast, there's people up there. If it's out west, there's people out there. If it's down south, there's people on hand all the time to go and help these bees. And then we relocate them, like what we talked about last Sunday, into places of community, cultural, educational, or environmental importance. That's the most important thing with rescuing a colony of stingless bees, is that we like to then use that to raise awareness for many generations. Yeah, so they go into schools, into community gardens, anywhere, you know, giving them to Aboriginal elders as well is really important. This one I had to actually wrap it up and then take it to there's a sanctuary just a couple of streets away over there, a new person who I've been helping capture a swarm. A mother nest is actually creating a daughter colony in one of her pots. So we put a hive there and we're capturing the swarm. But she's heavily interested. So I've got a beautiful garden, a perfect place for another sanctuary for rescue colonies. So I actually took the first natural habitat to her place in the morning, quickly puzzled it all back together because it was all cut up in pieces. So now that's all wrapped up, and it's going to be it's recovering really, and it needs to probably recover for a year, I reckon, at least a full year. We might have to actually extract that one out of the natural habitat, unfortunately, because it's so cut up into many pieces. So we'll make that decision soon. Then all of a sudden I've been called out again on a Friday arvo to one up at Newport Beach, which was again really good because it's quite close, and I had to pick up my son from school and then quickly blitz up to Newport Beach to try and a rescue from another. I think this one was a blue gum, maybe. It was massive, big old thing in the front yard. and they had done the best job ever because it was right down in the base, in the big barrel of the tree. So it's very difficult when the nest is down there because the size of these barrels, these trunks, and the sheer weight of them as well makes them really difficult to relocate unless you've got a crane. This one would have been around 500 kilos or so. So they made the decision to start cutting around this massive stump to try and maybe shave it down so it could be manageable for 2 people. So anyway, there's a big storm on Friday Arvo, and it was coming from the west. So by the time I got up there, they had done the best job ever. It had crumbled into pieces, which sounds really bad, but I was able to box it up. So thanks to Tim from Sugarbag Bees, he actually donated some hives to me recently, purposely made for rescue colonies that you need to box on the spot. So that first one that he gave me came in handy on Friday, and we boxed it up as the storm was coming over our heads. It was going to be full on. It was coming quickly, like strong winds, and it was going to be heavy rain. So that was about 4 o'clock, and we had just got the brood mass into the box, and all this is photo documented on Sydney Native Bees or Sydney Native Bee Community, as I do with all my rescues. And so that with the storm approaching, it actually calmed the bees down a little bit, which made them then relocate into where their queen was and where their brood was, which was in the box. So that was perfect. The weather came in to help me that afternoon because I wanted to get on with my Friday afternoon sort of socializing with my friends, and having a meal. So they got the bees in the box. We went to the beach for a little bit, for about an hour or so, and then by the time I got back there, that was it. They were in the box, wrapped up, and we were back having a meal by about 5:30. So it's no problem whatsoever. That worked out really well. The next day I just spent relocating that one again. That one's in rehab now. In my place, which my place is obviously a big sanctuary as well. There's many colonies around. So that one's out on the back balcony, adjusting to all the other colonies out there, but it's doing a really good job. Most of the colonies that I have here, none of them fight because they're used to hanging out with all the other colonies. It's a very happy place. My house here on the northern beaches, and then I just didn't really want to do any more beekeeping work after that. So just wanted to enjoy Pollinator Week. So going back to looking at plants, I went back to Stony Range. I went there yesterday. They were open from 2 till 4, and they got the nursery open. That's where our propagation hives are as well there. So I wanted to check on them and say good day to the ladies that are running the nursery there, and purchase some plants. I wanted to buy some local species of plants that I've always wanted. So one of them was Grevillea buxifolia, which is really good for the green carpenter bee around here. So I go bushwalking out the back there. We've got big nesting grounds, Xylocopa, lestis species. We're lucky enough here in Sydney that we've got both species of the metallic carpenter bees here, and they cross over. So yeah, I went nesting grounds there. Really, that's one of the plants that I love foraging on. Probably the photo I gave you today, Costa, to promote this, you can probably see the pink pollen on that bee's thorax. That's from that Grevillea buxifolia. Even though it's the photo is actually it's foraging on a tea tree flower. That's the pollen is from the Grevillea, and then I got the tea tree as well. So I had to buy the tea tree. I had to buy the Grevillea, and I want that in my garden. I want to see more carpenter bees in my garden, even though they love the bush, but I wouldn't mind bringing them back down here too. Every now and then I do see them, but very rarely. Only about once a season I'll see a female. I've never seen a male around here. That was my week, mate. That's my pollinator week, I reckon.
That is one busy week, Dan. That is one busy week, but a wonderful insight for everyone watching the broadcast now, but also a big hello to all of our replay viewers, because lots of people will be able to see this once it's shared on other websites after the actual broadcast. So wonderful opportunity for all our replay viewers to hear from our 5 speakers. And Dan just wrapped it up with a day in the life, a week in the life of a Meliponist, which was fantastic. Thanks, Dan. Now, what I thought I can do now is just bring everyone in, and I'll just take the banner off, and oops, I've just got Waggle Dance up there. Anyway, that's fine. So look, I suppose the first question that I had, and it actually came in onto one of the other posts that I had up yesterday. But the first question I want to put up to you is, what's the simplest way anyone watching this, or anyone who's already gardening, or anyone who's not gardening, how can people connect in the smallest of starting ways with our native pollinators? Okay, Megan and then Kit.
Plant flowering plants. Just try and increase the amount of food that's available for your pollinators, and so that they're flowering throughout the whole year. So the guide that the Waggle Bee Foundation is developing, that will help people to know in their areas what is flowering when, whether they're large trees or small ground covers. It's basically lots and lots of flowering plants, and sit with a cup of tea, or in the afternoon with a wine, and watch. Just watch and be in the area, in the space.
I mean, that's as simple advice as it gets. I mean, Kit, that's pretty much what you're talking about with Megan all the time as well, aren't you?
Yeah. So the bees, obviously, they need 2 things. They need food, and they also need somewhere to nest. So flowers is something that we need to help them with. And I've spent hours and hours, literally thousands of hours, in the bush, which is the best place to be, in people's gardens, stalking flowers for bees and looking at what flowers do the bees visit, but also what ones don't they visit. And so I've got an extensive list of the best flowers for native bees in a book I've written, Creating a Haven for Native Bees. Native flowers, because remember, Australia has been isolated from other countries for millions of years. So our native flora have co-evolved with our native bees, and they have often quite special associations. So if you try and put gardens full of exotic plants, this will only help the general bees, but the ones that need help the most are the specialist bees. So native flora is something I really advocate, and they also need somewhere to nest. So bee hotels, properly designed ones, as well as leaving bare ground for the native bees. That's something that we can all do. But then there's also, I'm sure many of you out there don't have a garden of your own. You might be like me, a poor research student. And so if that's the case, you can still help native bees, because the biggest problem for native bees is land clearing. So if we're talking about global scale things, and we can all get together to make sure that councils don't clear any more native vegetation. And another really effective thing you can do is, one of the major causes of land clearing in Australia, but also in biodiverse regions like the Amazon, is actually livestock farming. So if you reduce or eliminate meat from your diet, you can reduce the amount of habitat that is being cleared for livestock, and at the same time reduce your carbon footprint, because climate change is another massive thing that's harming our pollinators. So some things that everyone can do, even if you don't have a garden. Like, it would be wonderful if everyone did, but I know that for some of the people listening, you might not have gardens. So yeah, just making sure that you really get behind retaining native vegetation, making sure that land clearing is going to be something that's a thing of the past.
Thanks, Kit. I mean, Tim, your work has been promoting exactly what Kit and Megan have been talking about. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I guess I'd just mention that yes, growing flowering plants and providing nest sites for native bees, absolutely, totally agree with that. If you do happen to live in warmer parts of Australia, then keeping native stingless bees, of course, as Dan was talking about just before, meliponiculture is a great way to help stingless bees as well. And I like the idea as well that we can use our disturbed habitats, our human habitats, where we live, our urban areas, to breed populations of stingless bees that then can contribute to both our crop pollination and potentially restoring native bee populations to areas that have been heavily damaged, such as some of the fire sites. So stingless beekeeping, I mean, Dan mentioned it as well. If you ask any Meliponist, keeper of native stingless bees, you know, what one comment that often comes through is that how much they love their jobs. And so, you know, these bees I described before, how they're kind of a gateway species. They introduce people to the native, the world of nature generally. But also they can just generate so much pleasure and happiness to so many people, like gardening, I imagine, Costa. So yes, keeping stingless bees in the warmer parts of Australia is definitely something we can do to help.
Yep. Thanks, Tim. I noticed that Kit has already answered one of the questions that popped up about the my first metallic green carpenter this week. How they distinguish between male and female. And Kit, you mentioned that they look quite different.
Yeah. So fortunately, these bees are one of the easiest ones to ID and distinguish the males and females. With some of our native bees, that's not the case. So lots of our uriglossines and little highlights prosopisterons, they're less than a centimetre long, and the diagnostic differences are like the shape of a wing vein. So it makes my job quite difficult. With the Xylocopa lestis, the males and females look quite different because the males have markings on their face that distinguish them, and the females, there's 2 Xylocopa lestis species, and the females look quite similar. So those ones are quite hard to tell apart. But yeah, the males and females are more easy to tell apart. I was going to look for a link. I've got in Bees and the Burbs, my Facebook group. If you go to photos and albums, what I've got is I've got albums for each bee taxa. So for like the Xylocopa or the Hylaeus or the Megachili, and so you can get an idea of what the different bees look like, and yeah, see what I'm sure many of you will actually have seen native bees, but you might not have realized that they're actually native bees. So as I mentioned, lots of the little Hylaeus and uriglossines, they don't even have hairs. They're because they swallow the pollen. In evolution, they've lost the pollen collecting hairs, so they're hairless and can probably be mistaken for wasps.
Thanks, Kit. I noticed here, Dan, there was a question if someone wanted to get involved with bee rescue. This is from Coriel Evans. How do they go about it?
Yeah, it's a good question. Coriel, I know you're part of our Sydney Native Bee Community Facebook group, although you're up north, yeah, around Lake Macquarie. So you recently asked a question yesterday about your hive and what it was and what the bees were doing when they were taking material out of the hive on their hind legs the point being is that somebody in the community, you asked if someone can come around and have a look at it too, and not just, you know, doing some typing info and typing social media sort of communicating. What we really try and advocate is for community to be actually physically active, okay? And you asked for somebody in the region, even though this was a Sydney Facebook group, there was someone in the region that said, yeah, I'll come around, and all of a sudden you've met somebody, a neighbour. And now you've got a friend who's quite knowledgeable, and you guys can start it yourself in your own area, wherever you are. In Australia, whatever bees you are interested in too, you should communicate. You should contact whether they're people that are scientists or just enthusiasts as well, or just, you know, or just your neighbour if they've got a common interest. And whatever those bees are, like, I mean, I do a lot of stingless bee rescues, but I also do a lot of education on the solitary species too of this region. So you guys, if you guys want to start your own rescues up there on the central New South Wales Central Coast, I'd be more than happy to point you in that direction. We can communicate online, and you guys can start your own Lake Macquarie rescue and recovery service. And I mean, as long as you I just really support people that want to give back as well, give back to the community, give back to the bees where the bees belong, like just being nestled away maybe in your backyard for you to appreciate. That's okay, but I guess if you put it in an area like a public school or a community garden, getting them back to places where you can raise awareness and many people can appreciate them for many years to come. That's what is really quite exciting and really, yeah, it's quite rewarding at the end of the day to do that. So yeah, I'd be happy to help you guys start something.
Thanks, Dan. That was a great question. I noticed one which is a pretty straightforward one that I'm sure someone will put their hand up for. Where do blue-banded bees have their hives/homes? I've had 3 in my garden. That came from Sandra Jeffree. Does anyone want to have a go at that? Kit's got her hand up, and then Megan, do you want to have a chat on that one too?
Oh, sure.
All right, so blue-banded bees are in the genus Amygdala, and these, like most bees, they nest in the ground. So these are also solitary bees, so they don't live in colonies. Each female, what she does is she goes and collects nectar and pollen, and she digs the nest and then puts the nectar and pollen in her nest, lays an egg on that, and then no more. She doesn't go back and feed it. She stocks the nest with all the food the baby will need to develop from an egg to a larvae to an adult bee. And so they dig nests in the ground, and the type of substrate they prefer can vary. So, for example, Amygdala dorsoni, same genus as some of the blue-banded bees. No, not all Amygdala have blue bands. Even the ones that sometimes get called blue-banded bees, but they nest in the ground. So fairly clayey soil, mud-like soil. You can even encourage them to create a nesting habitat for them with what I call Amygdala apartments. And so in my book, Creating a Heaven for Native Bees, I have a section on that based on some research that has been done and published. So the designs have been proven to work. But they're ground nesting ones and solitary, so you won't find them living in hives. That's great that they're coming to your garden because they're very good pollinators. So you'll get your plants pollinated.
Thanks, Kit. Anything to add to that, Megan?
Yeah, sure. So they like to, their favoured area is a vertical ground, like a dam wall or a creek bed or a river bank. They will nest in the ground, but they do like the verticals, but they also like mud brick homes. And they can actually be quite problematic for people who own mud brick dwellings, and they can be quite destructive. So you need to try and have a think about what you're going to do if you do a mud brick home, as they're quite attractive as nesting spaces. I have had people say that they've got bees in their homes, and what should they do when we've given advice and asked for them to give us some feedback, but I've never had any feedback, so I'm not really sure if the advice that we've given has been successful or not. So, yeah.
Yeah, we Megan, we visited the Secret Garden out at Western Sydney Uni to do a story on the wonderful sort of supported work programs they've got going out there, and the mud brick house was alive. They had a hotel there that was full. I haven't seen. It was like it sort of looked more like, sort of a hotel at the airport, bringing in Australians flying back in. It was full, right? Every hole was covered over. It was almost like glass. But then there was also all the bees were in the wall, and you could see them. I could see their butts sticking out. I know what you mean, because that's a great example. So if anyone's out there, have a look in the side of the office, because it's alive.
Also, those the Northwest group who sponsor the Secret Garden, they make bee hotels, and they make them really well, and they're a really good community-based disabilities community. And one of their members, her sister, she and I studied together. We were the ones who wanted to do the pollinator week when we were doing our PhD. Anyway, so she taught this group how to make a bee hotel and properly, and they've continued to do properly structured, crafted, really attractive bee hotels. So if anyone's in the Richmond area and they want a bee hotel and they can't make one themselves, don't go to your hardware store, go to the Secret Garden and support them, because they're very good at it.
Yeah, I can vouch for that, because we filmed that in our story, and the participants in the program were fantastic. They know their work. They put it together with a lot of heart and spirit. It's wonderful to see, and I can vouch for that firsthand, because I saw it only 2 weeks ago. Now, Fiona, I had a question here, which is one that came up yesterday in the chat, and it was related to honeybee, native bee competition and that space in terms of educating around that. Do you want to have a little bit of a chat about that?
Yeah, that'd be great, because it's certainly something from a foundation point of view, because we navigate, we work across the honeybee space and also the native bee space. It's something that comes up all the time. And I think from my point of view, I think what is important to try and get across is that honeybees are introduced, but so are the food crops that they've co-evolved with, that they're often used to pollinate. So we're using that introduced species not just for honey production, but also to pollinate many of these food crops. We're also looking at the importance of native bees in terms of ecosystem health, because of their co-evolved relationship with the native environment. So I think what's important for me is that it's not a matter of whether food security and honeybees pollinating food crops or ecosystem health, which is more important. Both are important, both are crucial. And we need to find safe ways to have a dialogue about how we can come together to make sure that both are secured, that our native bees are really well supported and can continue to be there to support ecosystem health, and that the honeybees are there and continue to support many of the agricultural crops, the farmers. The other thing I would say is that there's a lot of evidence to show that those agricultural crops that do rely on honeybees for pollination, they do much better when there's a diversity of pollinators as well. So native bees, might be poplar flies, it might be. So I think it's important that we don't focus on competition, because, you know, otherwise we don't tend to say, well, birds are competing against the bees and the bats are competing. We don't demonize those species, but there is a lot of tension between native bees and honeybees that I really want to see that gone, so that we can really have some great conversations about how do we make the environment better for all.
Thanks, Fiona. That really sort of put that into a nice balanced perspective, because we want to look after both. I agree. And, you know, it comes down to that responsibility. Beekeepers in the city need to be responsible for their bees, just as beekeepers in the country need to be responsible for, or not only beekeepers, but anyone looking after things need to be responsible for it. And at the same time, each and every one of you are powerful advocates for conservation. And that conservation can only happen if the awareness is out there and the understanding is there. And I know, judging by some of the comments, that everything that you've all been talking about is really adding to that knowledge. Lisa's just said, you know, so much valuable knowledge being shared this afternoon. Thanks, everyone, because, you know, if we want gardeners to take it to the next level, the more information they have, then the more they are the advocates. They are the Pollinator Week advocates every day of the year, not just during Pollinator Week. So thanks for...
Can I just add, the one thing we all agree on is the best thing we can do is plant more flowering plants. You know, plant, plant, plant. It takes the focus away from the competition, and it puts it onto what can we actually do? How can we empower people to make a difference? And we can all make a difference by planting flowering plants that are going to support all pollinators.
Thanks, Fiona. Now, look, we've hit we're just on the hour. I don't want to keep everyone on a Sunday afternoon, even though I know that we could just keep smashing out the questions.
Go into the evening.
And we could easily go into the evening. But what about, I think I would love to do a around the block and have a final word from everyone again. So maybe what say we this time start in Sydney and work our way back around and end in Brisbane. So take it away. We'll go Sydney, Central West, Melbourne, Perth, and then finish back up in Brizzy. So Dan, final thoughts you want to share with everyone?
Oh, okay. So 2020, yeah, Pollinator Week 2020. We've all been still expressing our screen time, but we need to start, socializing again. And obviously, when it comes to, you know, our love for pollinators and bees, let's communicate more as a community, and don't just sort of internalize everything. Think about yourself and what you're collecting when it comes to your hives or your solitary bee habitats. It's a great way to communicate with your neighbours and your own community. So community is key.
Dan, you're talking to someone who loves community, like all of you on here today. But thanks for making that a Helvetica capital
Big C
72-point community, because that's what it's about. Thanks, Dan. Absolute treat. So let's just climb the sandstone curtain and head out. Megan, how are you feeling? Tell us. What do you want to? What's your final word?
I think it's really important that people understand that by looking after the pollinators, by planting plants, by leaving things a little untidy to provide habitat, to be watching, to be observing, not to reduce or stop putting chemicals in our environment. All of that will not only help the pollinators, but it will help the birds and the frogs and the lizards and the whole food chain that goes from the teeniest, tiniest little insects all the way up to us and beyond. And if we can start looking after our pollinators with having them as our focus, the whole environment within which we live will be better for that.
Couldn't agree more, Megan. Thank you. And, you know, particularly off the back of the wild pollinator count, it was the Aussie backyard bird count, and all of these wonderful activities that are promoting citizen science as an engagement activity. And as Dan said, and as you said, Megan, it's something that the whole community can get involved in, from a family to an individual to an entire street. And yeah, I second, third, and 10th everything you just said. Thanks, Megan. So across the Nullarbor or the Nullarbor, all the way out to Kit.
Right, thanks for everyone that's been listening to this and participating in it. As the other people here of Beeple, I want to get this to be a term, Beeple, people that are all for bees. All the Beeple here are all about, you know, being so passionate about native bees. And what I really want to emphasize is that we need to do this not because bees, you know, contribute to the food we eat. I mean, they do, especially honeybees, but this is more than about us. This is about protecting biodiversity that has evolved over thousands, millions of years. So the first bees evolved back during the Cretaceous. Bees have been on this planet a lot longer than we have, and they've evolved a fascinating array of behaviors and lifestyles, and they're just beautiful and cute. And you know, the world would be such a terrible place, in my opinion, if there were no bees, or even every single bee species that exists. If one were to go extinct, it might not cause the collapse of an ecosystem, but it's the irreversible loss of something that has evolved. And I think, you know, we can all do something really positive through our, you know, raising awareness, getting the message out there, preserving native habitat, planting more flowers, going plant-based, and making sure that our native bees continue to be able to thrive across Australia and across the world for anyone that's listening in globally. So yeah, we can always do something really positive, and I think it's something amazing that we can all help towards, because native bees are so interconnected. So as I said, it's not about us, it's about the entire biodiverse environment.
Thank you, Kit. You've summed it up. You've summed it up very sweetly there. I appreciate that wonderful sentiment. So, from Kit in Perth, we'll head down to Melbourne. I don't know what my order was there. It just kind of went all over the shop. But anyway, Fiona, final word.
Yeah, look, I would say that the Australian Pollinator Week has been just fabulous. We've already had lots and lots and lots of events to share, to celebrate all of our pollinators. There are still a couple of events that are advertised and promoted through the Australian Pollinator Week website. So yeah, Your Garden, Our Future. Costa and I will be at that event on the 26th of November at 7 p.m. So there's still one more that you can get involved. There's a few other late ones. So I'd encourage you to have a look again at the Australian Pollinator Week site for any other events, but also come to the Ween Bee Foundation website and have a look at the Powerful Pollinators, lots of different events and programs that we've got on offer.
Thanks, Fiona. And finally, we'll head back to whence we began. Back to Brisbane and Tim.
Yeah, thanks,
Tim.
Costa. It's been a great chat. Thanks everyone. There's been a lot said about community. There's been a lot said about on-the-ground action, about science communication, and that's been great. I would like to add one thing that I think we've not covered in any sort of depth today, and that's the importance of research. You know, there's a lot going on at the moment. There's a lot of scientific research being done in a number of universities and other research organisations around the country at the moment that are going to help us answer some of these questions. Some of the questions around, for example, competition between honeybees and native bees, how we can manage that better, questions around our diversity and, you know, naming our species and getting a better handle on the diversity that we have. Things like how to better manage our bees, how to build a better bee hotel for our blue-banded bees, for example. All of those rely on good research. We need the communication once the research is done. But yeah, I'd like to pay my respects, tip my hat, and yeah, big shout out to the researchers who are doing a fantastic job in that area at the moment, and look forward to building that research into the science communication in the future.
Thank you, Tim. I agree. The research is such a powerful mechanism to embed this change into the next generation. Sophie said here, rather than save the bees, maybe we should just feed the bees by planting and protecting habitat. Very simple but clearly articulated there, Soph. Thank you for saying that. We've got thanks from everyone in Beaumaris. Tim, this is why I love attending the annual forum. This is from Wendy. All the research presented is such an eye-opener. So I hope, everyone, that from out of this, you've got lots of very, very valuable websites that you can, or not just websites, but Facebook pages and accounts and research information that you can connect with and follow up until the next conference. Tim, when is the next conference? Do you know? Yeah,
It's not been absolutely decided yet, but it's very likely to take place in Sydney in 2022, which will probably go back to back with the Honeybee Conference, which I think they're aiming to celebrate 200 years of honeybees in Australia in 2022, and they'll be holding their conference, and we'll be going back to back with that.
Thanks, Tim. All right, everyone. Well, once again, a big thank you to our wonderful panel, Kit in WA, Megan here in New South Wales, Fiona down in Victoria, Tim up in Brisbane, and Dan here in Sydney. Thank you all very much for your time. For anyone who's written a question up there, the panel will jump on and pass any comments that are appropriate to any of the questions. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Thank you for being a part of Pollinator Week 2020. We will see you in Pollinator Week 2021, of course, but just do a little bit of Pollinator Week every week. Keep an eye out for our pollinators. Plant an additional plant that will build your floral calendar so that we've got flowers for our native pollinators every week of the year. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great weekend, and bye for now.
Thanks, Costa.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Costa.
Costa.
Thanks, everyone.
You can stay on. Oh, hang on.